And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, for frequency's sake tag team champions of the world, the Wizard CZ and Never Wrong Nick Bull.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast, episode 108. It's amazing we've done this many of them. They just fly by, and we've got another interesting guest, another interesting show this week as we come to you live from the Highview Lounge Studios, live from wherever CZ is recording. I am your host, Never Wrong Nick Bull. We are powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and I am joined by my tag team partner, we're co-champs of the network, correct?
Correct. We are the tag
Okay,
team champions of the For Frequency's Sake podcast network.
That's a lot.
Nick,
That's
a bit of a mouthful. Nick, I just want to start the show off by saying you tried to change my gimmick last week. Management did not take to it, so the Wizard is here to stay.
I forgot about that for a hot minute. And now that wasn't it Mark Wizard? Mark Wizardson, that's right. For a hot minute, I forgot about it, you big-time Mark Wizardson. Well, we've got a guest this week, and we got daylight savings time upon us, so the Shadow Alpha can rest up now and do the podcast now so he can work later. Of course, joining us on the show is SCW Pro Star. That's how we know him, but we're going to learn more about him tonight. Augustus Draven. Augustus, thank you for joining us tonight. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
We're glad to have you here. It's a voice we haven't had on this show, a voice we really haven't heard from. So I'm very interested in hearing your story and how you got into this thing. But I'm going to start off the show by asking you the same question I ask every other one of our other guests. That is, bleh. Why pro wrestling? What got you hooked? Why do you love it? Like, what is it for you that gets you into pro wrestling? That got you into pro wrestling, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I happened upon it as a kid, just flipping through the channels, as was at the time.
I think we're losing you, Augustus.
We may be losing. I hear you, CZ. I hope you can hear me. We lost Augustus. Augustus, if you can hear us, exit out real quick and join right back in. We'll get you back in here. There he is.
There he is.
Hey.
Go ahead. We'll start off again. What got you into pro wrestling, Augustus? What got you hooked into this thing we all love and enjoy?
Yeah, so I was flipping through the channels as a kid, and I came across TV wrestling. I just came across an episode of WWF. Bret Hart was featured at the time, and something hooked me in, and I never stopped. You know, I came close a couple of times. Fan, but I never stopped watching. It's just kind of hard to describe. We all like what we like, right? You know what I mean? Personal taste is not up for debate, right? We're all allowed to like what we like, and there's just something about it that just got in me and never left. So I love it. It's the most consistent entertainment form that I've participated in over the course of my life, and just and I just came to respect it. So the older I got, I didn't grow out of it, right? I got more dialed into it, right? Especially just every year, but just every season of life, I've gotten more and more into it. And then when I was a college student getting my bachelor's degree, I took a lot of film classes, and you learn how the sausage is made. Right. And that made me less of a film critic. It made me appreciate movies and television more. And I was just translating everything I was learning about film into wrestling. Right. I also took a bunch of theater classes. right? And that gave me more appreciation of wrestling, right? So from just being a fan and just being wowed by the action, the larger than life personalities, the pyro, the video packages, all that kind of just grabbed my attention and sucked me in as a kid. But then as I got older, the intricacies of it, the technicalities of it, how everything was put together and produced, a real appreciation of the art really set in and is maintained to this day. And then becoming a trained wrestler and then really learning how the sausage is made, right? That can kill your fandom. It does for some people, right? When you learn psychology, you learn the steps of a wrestling match, and it changes the way you watch wrestling. Some people can't be fans anymore, and they end up hating it, right? For me, it was the opposite. I just loved it even more. The more I learn about wrestling, and the more I'm able to, I don't have my ego so into it, right? So it's not like I don't watch wrestling like, well, if I'm not involved, if I'm not in the main event of WrestleMania, I hate it. That's not me at all, right? So learning the technicalities of it, learning all the intricacies of it, and watching it differently now. I don't watch wrestling. I'm still able to watch it as a fan, but I'm watching it very much like tape study, right? Like football and basketball teams during the week go and study tape for their next big game, right? That's more how I watch wrestling now. And I love it more because of that, because now I'm learning more, right? As a fan, especially in the internet era, it's easy to think we know, right? We know everything. We're on the inside. We know the terms, etc. But becoming a trained wrestler really lets you know that you know nothing, right? And I'm big into philosophy and meditation and spirituality and stuff. So I'm all about learning that I know nothing and knowing that I know nothing and having a beginner's mind. And pro wrestling constantly provides an opportunity to have beginner's mind. There's so much to it. It's improv, it's theater, like I said, it's movies and TV, but it's also athletics. It's also sport. It takes extreme endurance. It takes strength. You have to be able to lift people and land them safely. So there's all these different things involved with it that in every season of my life, I've grown to appreciate and love even more.
I love how you bring up the fact that you saw how the sausage was made and talked about your film, going through film and breaking and comparing it to wrestling like that. I just love it because, and then you added that thing there at the end where wrestling is the great uniter. You could ask 20 different people in an audience what they're there to watch and why they're there to watch it, and you get 20 different answers, and nobody's wrong. Like, everybody is coming there for something different, but there it is, this great drama, this theater that's going on right before us, uniting everybody. I just love it. I love how you described it, and I love how you said, you didn't change your opinion on after film or after wrestling, after it didn't sour you after you learned how the sausage was made.
So I had a question in mind that I was going to ask you just right off the top of the show that
it's a more of an appreciation.
I kind of changed where I want to go here. You're talking about watching wrestling as a fan, but more like watching to learn from what you're watching. Let me ask you this. Obviously, you're watching current product. What's tripping your trigger right now? What do you gravitate towards the most that is helping you not only appreciate it as a fan, but kind of grow as your own wrestler, as yourself as a wrestler?
So currently right now, it's my favorite wrestlers so it would be my personal favorite wrestlers of all time who are still active, right? So I am currently really watching them more with that worker's eye, right? So like the wrestler or the performer that gets me the most emotionally invested over the last year or two has been Sting. Not a lot to study in terms of technique and stuff right now, right? But then the other two people who probably get me the most emotionally invested would be Christian Cage and Samoa Joe. And those
Okay.
two are a Grand Canyon of wealth of knowledge and learning apiece in what they do, right? I'm getting low-level goosebumps just thinking about it because they are so good, and I've been a fan of both of them for so long, and I really started dialing in and watching what they're doing.
I love that you bring up Christian Cage. He is in the midst of probably the greatest run of his career, is he not? And he just keeps getting better and better
so
and better.
I've loved them for years. Yes, they both do. They're both, neither of them are resting on their laurels. They're consistently.
I love it. Those are two great. I know Nick and I spent a good deal talking about Christian Cage last week when we were talking about Revolution and Sting's last match. You bring up Sting as well. So great names to bring up. When you were growing up watching wrestling as a fan, who did you gravitate towards? I'm curious to see.
Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler of all time. I don't even need you to expand on that. Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Yes.
And it's a distant number 2, right? Yeah. So it's Bret Hart, and I'm in Shawn Michaels country, right? I go to the school of Shawn Michael fans, right? So I very much am kind of a lone wolf or a what is it? The kind of a devil's advocate. Voice of alternative on that, right? I am surrounded by a wealth of Shawn Michaels fans, right? But I will always wave a flag for Bret the Hitman Hart, and will give no inch, no quarter on his greatness, especially when it comes to studying as a trained wrestler, right? Because Bret Hart, what I'll tell the kids in the school, and I live in the bunkhouse for the new students for Black and Brave. I tell them, Shawn Michaels, as a fan, especially coming up, forget the fandom. As a wrestler, right? Shawn Michaels is great, one of the greatest of all time, at the stuff that can't be studied, right? At the stuff that can't be learned, I say, right? Bret Hart is great at all the stuff that you can learn and study and train, right? So, but Bret Hart, like when I started watching, he was top dog, and that kind of ingrained in me that wrestling is what's up. You know what I mean? So like it always kind of looked and felt more like a real fight. And I guess that I kind of just gravitated to that. Right. So that kind of goes along with what I was saying of I was just a fan of his. I just loved his style. He had style, right? His outfits, his entrance attire, the sunglasses, especially when he was champion, they would have him come out with pyro above him. But then just kind of rewatching over the years, like, man, he is so good. And then coming and learning to be a wrestler, it's like, he's not good. He is great. He is a master of his craft. And looking at that stuff and studying his stuff just provides a wealth of knowledge and information and application to my own performances.
Well, I'm sure glad we booked Augustus Draven on here because you are singing this. You're singing the song of Bret Hart, and I love to hear it. I love to hear somebody else come on here and wax poetic about Bret. What got you hooked on Bret as a fan? What is it about him? Is it just the fact that he is so polished at everything? He is the excellence of execution.
So when I first started watching him, it was probably just how cool he looked. He looks cool. You know what I mean? And especially you look at him. And I'll even tie in because Bret and Shawn are just forever linked, right? They just look different than the wrestlers that came before them, especially in WWF. You look at Hogan, you look at Macho Man, all of them. It was kind of the short tights, knee pads, boots, plain colors, right? Hogan wore the same attire for 10 years, right? Macho Man started mixing it up once he went to Macho King, right? But they just kind of look cool, right? They weren't just the plain tights. Ric Flair, great example, right? Great wrestler, great robe, but again, it's just a pair of trunks, a pair of knee pads, a pair of boots. He actually had some different colors, right? But as a kid, because I started as a kid, right? It's like seeing him like, whoa, that looks cool, especially seeing his entrance, right? Comes out with the leather jacket. The sunglasses were cool, and then Shawn Michaels coming out with his leather getup and his sunglasses. That was cool, you know what I mean? And they had a detailed attire, right? So from a kid, and then they changed it out too, right? So like stuff like that as a kid is going to grab your attention, right?
For sure,
you can bring it to the modern era of John Cena every 3 months cycled out his hat, his shirt, his armband colors, right? And had a new logo and stuff. That type of stuff, beyond just wanting to sell merch, it grabs your attention as a kid, right? Kids are, they're simple, right?
Sure.
Kids aren't
Yeah.
thinking about work rate. You know what I mean? So
No.
like I wasn't, so especially as a kid, right? I'm watching like, whoa, that dude looks cool. And then it also helped, whether it's technically proficient or not, Brett's stuff looked like it was a real fight, or it looked more like it was a real fight. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, I know.
the way the way he got in there, the way he would sell and stuff like that. So as a kid, that kind of drew me in, right? And then you just compare that to Sean, right? Because they were fighting each other. It seemed like every 3 months, at least a few times a year, they were mixing it up on TV or pay-per-view back then. And then you compare it to Sean, who's kind of the dramatic, right? He's going out, right, where Brett's kind of selling in. So those two differences was kind of a complete package to just really suck me in, keep me watching, keep me interested and engaged and entertained.